Wait. What? Wait. What? Shut your bitch ass up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another GSD. Not just another one, but GSD 50. And because it's number 50, I wanted to tackle something that I've been thinking about for some time now, probably a year or more. And I thought this would be the best time to just have this discussion and share this with you. And obviously, I talk a lot about leadership. Obviously, I talk a lot about personal growth and self-worth and discipline and all the things that you're used to me discussing. And this goes hand in hand with that, of course. But I want to address something today that I believe is one of the most toxic traits of an individual. And not just toxic. And by the way, I'm going to kind of layer through this, and I might even jump around a little bit, so bear with me. But not toxic in the way that we would normally think. I believe when we think toxic trait, it's easy to label the loud ones. It's easy to label the harmful ones. Lying is a toxic trait. Manipulation is a toxic trait. Yelling is a toxic trait. And again, I think it's easy for us to identify and recognize what those are. This one is what I believe is a silent killer of leadership. I believe it's a silent killer of relationships. And that's why I think it's a toxic trait. And what I want to discuss today is avoidance. The act of avoidance. What is avoidance? Now, I want to turn it back just a second because I was talking about toxic traits, and I want to share with you something that I believe. Now, guys, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. A lot of what I share with you is based on my experiences, based on the information that I learned, based on results of application. So what I'm about to say is just what I think. True or not, I'm not sure. Somebody out there smarter than me can help me understand this. But I think toxic traits are a trauma response. I think our toxic traits show up in our behavior because of things that have happened to us in the past, the way that we are treated, the experiences that maybe that we had to go through. And the toxic trait really brands it as a negativity, brands it as something that is, I don't know, just a negative impact. Negative is the best word. I don't even want to try to rephrase it. It's branded as something that's negative. But I think if we were to look at toxic traits as a trauma response, we would treat them differently. And again, that's just me sharing my thoughts. What I think that, again, our toxic traits are just a trauma response. So when I look at avoidance, I look at that silent killer of leadership, this toxic trait of leadership, as a testament to a trauma response. And when we look at avoidance, when it shows up, again, I think is another testament as it being a trauma response. So let's talk about what avoidance, when does this show up? What does it look like? How does this impact us? Part of this is going to be triggered by your hardwire. Now, we talk about personality, and when I discuss personality, I oversimplify it by stating it's how you process information and emotion. The personality profile that I'm most familiar with is the DISC, the DISC, where you have the driver, the influencer, the stabilizer, and the cautious critical. So someone that naturally has a stabilizing or a peacekeeping personality would be avoidance is going to come to them a little more natural, and they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset people. They don't want confrontation. They just hope that things will fix itself and hope that that it will go away. Now, again, some of that is part of the hardware. And those of you that are peacekeeper personalities, I think it's really important for you to develop the skill set of having difficult conversations. It's very important for you to develop the skill set of communication so you can navigate those scenarios, you can navigate those situations in a way that doesn't necessarily create conflict. They're not conflict driven, they're solution focused. So that's one part of avoidance. Just know that there may be a piece of it that is attached to your hardware. But I think a big piece of it, again, comes from our indoctrination of upbringing, whether it's parents, school, coworkers, employees, previous employers, relationships, whether they're friendships, intimate relationships. Again, I believe that the person you are today is a result of your decisions and experiences. So when we look at avoidance, a couple of things that I want to look at outside of the hardware. One is fear. Fear drives avoidance. Fear of difficult conversations, fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of failure, fear of not getting the result that we want, right? That failure aspect of it, just fear of something not going perfect, or fear of somebody thinking of us in a different way, or fear, again, of that confrontation. And I think that's a big one. It's just the fear. Now, the fear side, I think, is often blanketed by people with saying, well, if people would just do the right thing, then I wouldn't need to have this conversation. And I think that we have to be careful with that, because we can get a little self-righteous. We can turn someone else into an enemy pretty quickly if they're not doing what we think is right, or we brand it as what we think is right, if they're not doing what we think they should do. So I think it's really easy to start to build this narrative that justifies our behavior of avoidance, because if the other person would just do what they were supposed to do, or do what I think they're supposed to do, or do the right thing, I wouldn't need to have this conversation. And then that narrative is also supported. Well, if I have this conversation with Josh, it's just going to make it worse. So again, everything is fueling avoidance. Avoidance is also fueled just by discomfort. And I think the discomfort and fear, I think these are also part of the trauma response. I think it's part of, when I say trauma response, again, whether it's upbringing in the home, whether it's schools, whether it's relationships, but again, I think it's a trauma response where we've done this once or even multiple times, and we get this terrible result. We get this ultimately tragic result. So therefore, we believe that, well, this one thing doesn't work, so this must, I'll just do it this way. I'll just choose avoidance. So we avoid difficult conversations. We avoid our emotions. We avoid people in our life that have a negative impact. And something you got to realize here is that when you choose avoidance, you're choosing absorption. You're absorbing all of this negativity. You're absorbing all of these emotions instead of expressing them, instead of having this conversation. So avoidance, again, I think leads to absorption. And when we get absorbed in the emotion, and we get absorbed in the conflict, and we get absorbed in the projected outcome, we also get absorbed in alleviating that pain. So we become absorbed in distraction. We become self-absorbed. We become absorbed in numbing ourselves to the mental and physical discomfort that it creates. And it's kind of crazy. Again, I told you guys I'm going to jump all around on this, but it's crazy to me how this one single act creates so many ripples across so many different areas of our life. This single act of avoidance. I think that some of the avoidance comes from being overwhelmed. We can be overwhelmed, and therefore we retreat. We extract ourselves from that situation or from that person or from whatever. And we feel like maybe we're incapable of handling it. Maybe we're incapable of coming up with a solution. So we don't act. We don't act in a progressive manner, because avoidance is an action. Avoidance is a decision. And if you're making a decision to not decide, it's still a decision. So avoidance is a decision. Avoidance is an action. It creates inaction, but it's an action. You choose avoidance. So I think avoidance also comes from lack of confidence. And again, this is another piece as to why I think that some of it is a trauma response. I think that, we try something, we failed. Maybe we tried it twice, we failed. Maybe if you're pretty resilient, at least you think you are, you've tried it a third time and it failed. So we just give up on that. And what a tragic thing here is, avoidance is really giving up on that thing. It's giving up on the relationship. It's giving up on the dream. It's giving up on the choice. It's giving up on the decision. It's giving up on the action. It's giving up on that thing. So when you choose avoidance, it results in you giving up. The other bad thing, I won't say the bad thing. The other bad thing of avoidance here is it it spends a lot of equity with people that have trust in you, that have relational equity in you, that have emotional equity in you. It starts to spin that. It spins that equity. It's like a bank account. It's like if you could put emotions into a monetary value, the longer that you avoid something, the more that money is extracted from that account. Almost in a drip effect. Like every day you wake up and you've got that relationship and you're avoiding the hard conversation, and it's like drawing $10 out of that account, or $100 out of that account, or $1,000 out of that account, because there is a compounding effect on this. The first day it might be 10, the first week it might be $10 a day, the second week it might be 50. But when you get a couple months down the road, that withdrawal that you're making, that drip effect on that account, is thousands of dollars a day you're spending in equity because you're not willing to have these conversations. Here's another fascinating one to me as to why people choose avoidance is they're scared of the truth. They're scared of the truth of themselves, the truth of the situation, the truth of others. More, I think it's their fear, the truth of themselves is the biggest fear there. We don't have to come to terms with what we're doing, because then we would have to face the facts of who we are. So we choose avoidance. By the way, guys, I'm guilty of all of this. The past version of me suffered with this pretty significantly for all of the reasons that I'm talking about. And I think that's why I wanted to share this with you today, because of the incredible positive compounding effect it is having in my life by not avoiding shit, by not avoiding things. And I've had difficult conversations that have led to difficult decisions that have allowed me to stop avoiding and start growing past that shit. But when you have that, back to this equity thing, when you have that going on in your life and you're spending equity, guys, you are draining yourself emotionally and mentally because you just keep putting off the thing. And it's fucking heartbreaking. In your personal relationships, in your work relationships, again, when you choose avoidance, you're choosing failure. You're choosing to give up. Now, I know I stated on distraction earlier, but you have to be careful of what the distraction is. The distraction of in relationships, okay? The distraction is a new relationship. In partnerships, in business, looking at business partnership or not, the distraction is new opportunity. And we choose this new opportunity or we choose this new relationship, and we believe that we have now severed all ties that is related to that old thing. Therefore, our justification for avoidance is given because now we don't have to deal with it. We just went to this new thing. We jump from relationship to relationship. We jump from opportunity to opportunity because with avoidance, there is no commitment. With avoidance, there is no commitment. There's no commitment to yourself. There's no commitment to the other people. With avoidance, there is no commitment. And as I've been reflecting on this and observing this and running through this in my mind over the last couple years, and started implementing, started applying, started putting this thing to work, and really trying to understand if it's worth it, if the result is there. I realized again how much of a silent killer this particular trait is. This again, I truly think it's a silent killer of leadership. So to bring this up to another level here before I start to close it down, is there's something going on in your life right now that you're avoiding. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's admitting that you have an addiction. Maybe it's a conversation that you should be having for closure. Whatever it is, you've probably got something going on in your life, hidden, covered in distraction, suppressed away, that you're avoiding. So I'm going to encourage you, because I care about you. I want to see you be the best fucking version of you possible. I want to see you succeed. I want to see you have all of the great things and the great relationships and the great people. I will encourage you to address that thing. I will encourage you to look in the mirror and start to understand why you choose avoidance over commitment, why you choose avoidance over discomfort, why you choose avoidance over confrontation. Why do you choose avoidance over failure? And why do you choose avoidance over the truth? That's what I'm encouraging you to do. Because regardless of the result, you will feel better. You will absolutely feel better because you don't have the skeleton hanging in your closet that is labeled avoidance. So I know this is the little different pace than I try to keep with the GSDs, and it's a little deeper, and it's a little bit longer. But because this is GSD 50, I wanted to share with you something that was on my mind, that was on my heart, something that I've been thinking about, something that I've been dealing with, and something that I've gotten much better at, and sharing with you the positive possibilities and the positive compound effect of being able to get over this one thing. Stop avoiding the things that you need to do and fucking get shit done. I'll see you next time.